ascertain the presence of a quorum.
Councillor Baker.
Here.
Councillor Campbell.
Here.
Councillor Siomo. Councillor Edwards. Councillor Essaibi-George. Councillor Flaherty. Councillor Flynn. Councillor Janey. Councillor McCarthy. Here. Councillor O'Malley. Present. Councillor Presley. Councillor Wu. And Councillor Zachem. Here. Madam President, we have a quorum, and Councillor Edwards has just joined us.
Wonderful. At this time, I would like my colleagues, all guests and staff to please rise as our clerk leads us in the invocation. I'm also going to invite up Sean. Sean Simmons is a resident of Dorchester. He's on his way to become an Eagle Scout. He is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance today.
Good afternoon. O thou who made us one nation out of many people, amidst our diversities of race and tradition and faith, unite us in a common love of freedom. Revive us in a spirit of devotion to the common good, so that we may open new doors to the neglected and oppressed. Cleanse the heart of our nation from that greed which preys upon others. Endow our leaders with wisdom, that they may stand among nations as an example of benevolence and exalted justice. Help us to make this land a common workshop of its people, where all may find their place and work, keen to do their best. Hear these words of the Athenian Pericles. I would have you day by day fix your eyes upon the greatness of your country until you become filled with love for her. And when you are impressed by the spectacle of her glory, reflect that it has been acquired by men and women who knew their duty and had the courage to do it. And these words of the Hebrew psalmist, let the people give praise, O God, of all the nations. Amen.
Thank you,
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Madam President.
At this time, I'm going to call up Councillor Flynn, who has a special presentation.
Thank you, Council President Campbell. I have an honor to present Angela Holm and Tim Kelly. They're from Comcast, and they had a day of volunteer work in the city of Boston. They visited Chinatown in the downtown area. They had over 400 volunteers, and they helped clean the street. They did some work in our schools, and they're a great neighbor. They're a great corporate neighbor. They provide a lot of help back to our city. It was an honor to join them and join Mayor Walsh in helping our neighborhoods. But I wanted to say thank you to Comcast for a great day of volunteering in our neighborhoods, and it's an honor to have you in the city.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for recognizing the work that we've done. It's a core tenet of our company to give back to the communities that we serve. And while we do it all year round in various ways around Boston, Comcast Cares Day is our main annual effort, and we were so thrilled to work in Chinatown this year, and I can't wait for next year. So thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I just quickly want to thank Councillor Flynn for showing up early on a brisk spring morning, kicking off the day, staying with us throughout the morning, and then continuing on through lunch. He was there the whole time, Had a great exchange with our senior executives that came up from Philadelphia. And of course, as the council said, Mayor Walsh, who joined us, he came in on 2 wheels. It was the morning for youth baseball ceremonies and kickoffs, and we know how busy you all are in the morning, and the mayor, and he took the time to say some kind words to kick off the, let's call them festivities, and for that we're grateful. And we're grateful for the council and many, of you that we've done work publicly. So thank you very much.
Thank you. If you guys would like to join us for a photo. We got the big photo? We got the big photo, yeah. You made the big ones.
This is great.
Paparazzi.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much. And it's our pleasure.
Hey, nice job. You know he stayed just for lunch, you know.
Thank you so much, Councilor Flynn, and thank you to Comcast Cares. I know they show up in various parts of the city for some incredible projects that change the landscape of our communities. So thank you, Councilor Flynn. At this time, moving on to the approval of the minutes. If there are no corrections to be made, the minutes of the last council meeting will stand approved. Seeing and hearing no objections, the minutes of the last council meeting are so approved. Moving on to communications from His Honor the Mayor.
Madam President, I'll read dockets 1021 through 1023.
Just 1021, because they're going to take those separately because the second is wonderful. Thank you.
Docket 1021, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $100,833 in the form of a grant for the FY19 DMH grant co-response awarded by the Mass Department of Mental Health to be administered by the Police Department. The grant will fund continued support of a full-time master's level mental health clinician to co-respond with officers in police districts B2 and B3, as well as part-time certified peer specialist.
Councilor McCarthy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I move to suspend and pass docket number 1021. As soon as we get the mental health clinicians on the street, the better, especially in B2 and B3, which we all work in, you and I both. So I'd like to suspend and pass at this time.
Thank you, Councilor McCarthy. Councilor McCarthy, the Chair of the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice, seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0121. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0121 has been passed.
Docket number 1022, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $58,000 in the form of a grant for the FY19 Local Consumer Aid Fund awarded by the Mass Attorney General to be administered by the Consumer Affairs and Licensing Department. The grant will fund the intake, resolution, and administration of consumer complaints and outreach on topics of concern to consumers.
Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
I would like to suspend and pass, Madam Chair.
Do you want to say a little bit more? I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but.
I didn't know it was coming to my committee.
Okay, so at this time, I will say a little bit more. So this grant, which comes from the current Attorney General's office, will be used for various purposes, but particularly to address complaints that come from consumers from the City of Boston. Actually, this docket could have gone to a couple of the council committees. We put it in Councilor Baker's committee. It could have also gone to Councilor Janey's committee on Small Business and Consumer Affairs, but we put it in Councilor Baker's because we've received this grant in the past, I believe, and it came through your committee in the past. So at this time, Councilor Baker, who is the chair of the Committee on Jobs, Wages, and Workforce Development, seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 1022. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1022 has been passed.
Docket number 1023, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $15,000 in the form of a grant for the FY18 National Violent Death Reporting System, awarded by the Mass Department of Public Health to be administered by the Police Department. The grant will fund data collection for the Bureau of Investigative Services and the Drug Control Unit.
Councilor McCarthy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I rise to suspend and pass docket number 1023. This grant for the National Violent Death Reporting System will continue to assist Boston Police Department and the Drug Control Unit.
Thank you, Councilor McCarthy. Councilor McCarthy, the Chair of the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice, seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 1023. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1023 has been passed. Madam Clerk, if we could amend the attendance record to reflect that Councilor Presley is here.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
Docket number 1024, message and order authorizing a sale of a certain portion of public way known as Everett Street in Alston, as shown on a plan of land entitled City of Boston Public Works Department Engineering Division Discontinuance Plan for Everett Street, Alston, dated March 22nd, 2018, specifically containing about 4,417 square feet, the discontinued parcel.
Docket 1024 will be assigned to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. Moving on to reports of public officers and others.
Madam President, I'll read from docket 1025 through 1037.
Perfect. Thank you.
Docket number 1025 notices receipt from the mayor of the appointment of Lana Jackson as a member of the Boston Cultural Council for a term expiring October 1st, 2019. Docket number 1026 notices receipt from the mayor of the appointment of Paulo Garcia as a member of the Boston Cultural Council for a term expiring October 1st, 2019. Docket number 1027 notices received from the mayor of the reappointment of Sean Radley as a member of the Boston Cultural Council for a term expiring October 1st, 2020. Docket number 1028 notices received from the mayor of the reappointment of Ann Moritz, as a member of the Boston Cultural Council for a term expiring October 1st, 2020. Docket number 1029 notices received from the mayor of the reappointment of Jill Ann Snyder as a member of the Archives and Records Advisory Commission for a term expiring January 3rd, 2022. Docket number 1037 notices received from the mayor of the reappointment of Judith Watkins as a member of the Archives and Records Advisory Commission for a term expiring January 3rd, 2022. Docket number 1031 notices received from the mayor of the reappointment of Kiana Saxon as a member of the City of Boston's Licensing Board for a term expiring June 1st, 2024. Docket number 1032 notices received from the mayor of the appointment of Benjamin Viner as a member of the City of Boston Scholarship Fund Committee for term expiring August 1st, 2019. Docket number 1033 notices received from the mayor of the reappointment of Ken Ryan Sr. as a member of the Residency Compliance Commission for a term expiring January 3rd, 2022. Docket number 1034, communication was received from Gail Willett, Commissioner of Assessing, of the appointment of Francis Graham as an Assistant Assessor effective May 12, 2018. Docket number 1035, communication was received from the City Clerk of the filing of the Boston Planning and Development Agency of the First Amendment to the report and decision on the Boston Garden Development Corp., now known as the Hub on Causeway, Chapter 121A project. Docket number 1036, notice was received from the City Clerk in accordance with Chapter 6 of the ordinances of 1979 regarding action taken by the mayor on papers acted upon by the City Council at its meeting of June 6, 2018. And docket number 1037, notice is received from the city clerk in accordance with Chapter 6 of the ordinances of 1979 regarding action taken by the mayor on papers acted upon by the City Council at its meeting of June 13, 2018.
Dockets 1025 through 1037 will be placed on file.
Docket number 1038, the constable bond of William Flippin have been duly approved by the collector treasurer, was received.
The chair seeks approval of docket 1038 under the usual terms and conditions. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1038 has been approved under the usual terms and conditions. Moving on to reports of committees.
Docket number 0913, Committee on Government Operations, to which was referred on June 13, 2018, docket number 0913. Message and ordinance amending CBC Ordinances Chapter 5, Section 5-5.10 regarding salary categories for certain offices. CBC Ordinances Chapter 2, Section 2-8.1, salary of city councilors, and Section 2.7-11, salary of the mayor, submits a report recommending the ordinance ought to pass in a new draft.
Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. This matter was sponsored by Mayor Martin Walsh and referred to the Committee on Government Operations on June 13, 2018. The committee held a public hearing on Thursday, June 21st. Docket 0913 proposes to amend certain parts of the City of Boston Code to adjust the maximum level of compensation for cities' appointed and elected officials consistent with the recommended ranges offered by the City of Boston's Compensation Advisory Board. The proposal amends a Scribner's error on CBC 9-9.1, which misstated the category of Inspectional Services Commissioner and recategorizes the Chief of Information Officer as a Category 1B position. At the hearing, the committee heard from 3 panels. The first panel included the Chair of the City of Boston's Compensation Advisory Board, John Tobin, and the Senior VP President of Siegel Waters Consulting, Elliot Sussels. They had noted that the non-relevant city jobs were at the same level as comparable private sector jobs and emphasized that there was a goal to seek and to maintain. Some category salary ranges were above or at market average, though most were significantly below. Siegel's recommendations to bring Boston official pay ranges into the market included increases to certain categories, specifically 1B, 2, 3, and 4A, reclassification of the Chief Informational Officer position, and a cost of living adjustment of 4.2% for council members and the mayor. The second panel included Chief Financial Officer in the City of Boston, Emmy Handy, as Director of Human Resources, Vivian Leonard, who explains the compensation review process as well as recommendations from the administration standpoint. CFO Handy noted that the last CAB review was conducted in 2013, but that no changes had been made to the category salary ranges in over 12 years, since 2006. The last panel speaker was President of the Boston Municipal Research Bureau, Sam Tyler. He expressed his approval of the city's return to the CAB review process and offered his support for the recommendations of the CAB. Sam Tyler offered further recommendations regarding compensation review and talent acquisition and retention following passage of docket 0913, including the review of the city's residency policy, updates to job descriptions, and performance-based salary increases. The committee addressed the uneven salaries of Category 1A commissioners, who now currently make less than many of their rank-and-file employees, and increasing the range maximums for Category 1A commissioners to provide additional flexibility. The committee has made a change to docket 0913 by amending Category 5 per diems and annual compensation caps consistent with other cost of living and market rate adjustments for Board of Examiners, Zoning Board of Appeals, and Zoning Commission members who were not considered because they had nothing else to compare to across the country. Lastly, I would like to make a note that the section of this order which pertains to city councils and mayors the mayor will not take effect until the respective elections in 2020 and 2022, while the category-based salary range adjustments for various department heads will take effect immediately. As Chair of Government Operations, I recommend that docket 0913 ought to pass in a new draft. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Anyone else looking to speak on this matter? At this time, Councilor Flaherty, who is the chair of the Committee on Government Operations, recommends acceptance of the committee report and passage of docket 0913 in a new draft. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0913 has been passed. Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Counselor Baker? Yes. Counselor Baker, yes. Counselor Campbell?
Yes.
Counselor Campbell, yes. Counselor Siomo? Yes. Counselor Siomo, yes. Counselor Edwards? Counselor Edwards, yes. Counselor Essaibi-George? Yes. Counselor Essaibi-George, yes. Counselor Flaherty? Yes. Counselor Flaherty, yes. Counselor Flynn? Yes. Counselor Flynn, yes. Counselor Janey? Yes. Counselor Janey, yes. Counselor McCarthy? Yes. Counselor McCarthy, yes. Counselor O'Malley? Yes. Counselor O'Malley, yes. Counselor Presley? No. Counselor Presley, no. Counselor Wu? Yes. Counselor Wu, yes. And Counselor Zachem? No. Counselor Zachem, no. Madam President, we have 11 votes in the affirmative, 2 votes in opposition, and docket number 0913 has passed.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Docket 0913 has passed. Moving on to matters recently heard for possible action.
I'll read docket 0101.
If we could, perfect.
Great.
Thank you.
Docket 0101, order approving a petition for a special law regarding an act to regulate lobbying activities before the City of Boston. And docket number 0987, an ordinance amending Chapter 2 of the City of Boston Code, ordinances regarding lobbyists, registration, and regulations.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Docket 0101 was sponsored by the mayor and referred to the committee on January 24th of 2018. And docket 0987 is an ordinance amending Chapter 2 of the City of Boston Code that was sponsored by Councilor Wu, Council President Campbell, and myself. And that matter was referred to the committee on June 20th. In their original proposals, both dockets define and outline the manner in which lobbyists are allowed to interact with City Hall, along with elaborating on process, fees, and penalties. However, the difference between the proposals include the original home petition allowed for either the city clerk or the commission or a commission appointed by the mayor and approved by the council to be the local enforcement entity, whereas the ordinance calls for the city clerk to be the local enforcement entity. The home rule calls for registration and reporting requirements twice a year, while the ordinance calls for 4 times a year. So for background reference, it's important to note that the committee held 2 hearings on docket 0101, first on January 17th of 2017, and the second one took place on April 28th of 2017. Throughout the discussions that took place at both of these hearings, many factors were brought to light, including whether to address this matter as a home rule petition or an ordinance, whether to have the city's clerk's office be the local enforcement entity, or to create an independent commission that would provide oversight. While the home rule petition goes beyond state requirements, but it's based on state requirements, it does not necessarily take into effect how city business is conducted and or what constitutes lobbying. What data collection technology would be necessary to implement the tracking system. The Superior Court case Gibbons et al. Versus William Galvin, which reviewed the interpretation application of direct business association with public officials. Also, how at the moment lobbyists are required to register once a year by filing a letter with the city's clerk that states the nature of their business. Registration and reporting requirements under this proposal tended to be burdensome, and also other agencies would be needed to be brought in for enforcement. Potential issues when lawyers are working on projects, specifically when registering and reporting requirements would violate the attorney-client privilege. And finally, the proposal should reflect the needs of how business is conducted in the city. We compared and contrasted both proposals, revisited many of the discussion topics from hearings, and found that while both proposals have similar intents, it made sense to move forward with the ordinance in terms of registration and reporting requirements, with the clerk's office being the enforcement entity, and then proceed with the home rule petition, which enables the Attorney General to enforce the penalties. So what we have before us are 2 new drafts of both dockets. Docket 0101 shall maintain the enforcement provision, Section 5 of the home rule as originally filed by the mayor, giving the Attorney General in the jurisdiction to impose criminal sanctions as well as increased monetary penalties up to $10,000 to the effective date, which will be changed upon passage. And then also, docket 0987 would provide the transparency in government by requiring registration and reporting of lobbying activities while recognizing how the city actually functions. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank, obviously, yourself and Councilor Wu for your time and talents around helping with the ordinance, as well as Christine and Michelle from Central Staff. They did tremendous work on redrafting the definitions and really taking a hard look at trying to, morph both the ordinance and the home rule petition into each other. And also acknowledge the administration's leadership and partnership on this. I finally get to go to an event and not have the mayor say, you know, what are we doing on this? When are we moving it? 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 So it's moved, and it's before the council now for a vote. And also the participation of council members at the hearings was invaluable as well. So I'd like to revisit the matter of looking at the resources allocated to the clerk's office and seeing how we could assist in enhancing her ability and to give her the necessary infrastructure, given that they'll now have to deal with an additional layer of responsibility with lobbyist registration. So it'd probably be a conversation, I guess, for another point, or we can have a discussion around what implications or budget impacts that will have on her. So at this time, as the Chair of Government Operations, I'm recommending that docket 0101, petition for a special law act to regulate lobbying activities before the City of Boston, and docket 0987, it's an ordinance amending Chapter 2 of the City of Boston Code, ordinances regarding lobbying registration regulation, both pass in new drafts. And now, through the Chair, would like to turn it over to my colleague, Councilor Wu, as well as yourself, just to, if you want to add additional comments and talk about both the ordinance and or the home rule petition. But happy to sort of have, I guess, a collusion of both the ordinance and the home rule petition, and finally have something on the books that is germane and takes into effect how business is conducted in the City of Boston. It's all encompassing in terms of not just with elected officials, but with other decision makers as well, and also working with the administration to make sure that we have the appropriate level of teeth and enforcement behind those that either don't register or who are violating sort of the tenor of what we're trying to accomplish here. So spirit of cooperation, I think, provided the best result in allowing both of these to come forward. And now we have something officially that we can move forward. And if we need to make adjustments along the way based on what we're seeing, we have the ability to now do that through the ordinance. And then down the road, when that home rule petition passes the legislature, we'll have additional tools at our disposal. So I appreciate your time and attention, and look forward to voting on it today. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Just rise to thank the chairman for shepherding this through over multiple years now. The council's been working on this for a while. And Madam President, for your partnership on this, and echo the thanks particularly to Christine and Michelle and central staff for their work. I want to thank the mayor also for pushing this conversation, and I think we've arrived at a place now where I feel confident that there are strong rules in the ordinance that can be implemented immediately, and then, as the chairman said, seeking that additional ability to put some teeth on the penalty side to add that extra deterrent. For me, this is a clear vote. It's about ensuring transparency, to have all the lobbyists and anyone who's attempting to influence city business on behalf of a client register and disclose. It's about creating fairness so that there's one set of rules that everybody plays by. But most importantly, it's really about reinforcing public trust in the integrity of its government at a time when that is being questioned every day in different ways. That sense of trust is what gives us the benefit of partnering with residents on issues and the credibility to take on the big problems and challenges that need solving today more than ever. I think we've seen recently that more and more large issues are coming before city government that involve financial interests, that involve big policy decisions that change the scope of who's able to profit and who's able to reap in some of the benefits. Issues most recently like the short-term rentals ordinance, issues like the cannabis market developing and who has access to these licenses, and then the day-to-day of development, zoning, licensing, small businesses. What happens at the city level is different from what happens at the state level. It's a different type of decision-making as well as a different pace of decision-making. So I am happy that our version, this legislation we're considering today, has more frequent reporting as well as a more closely tailored set of language to city business. So thank you again to all my colleagues. I'm eager to have support on both these matters that I think will really be the whole package of what we've been looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. I just want to quickly add, I thank you, Councilor Flaherty, for your leadership on this, and Councilor Wu the same. Thank you to Christine and Michelle for their work on this as well. And thank you to the mayor and his administration for turning this around so quickly after the working session on Monday. this is a bifurcated approach, and we might find that this is useful to other policy matters. I think when looking at the ordinance versus the home rule, the biggest part of the discussion was how do we allow ourselves, or how do we get things done quicker, and how do we get things done faster? Sometimes we send things up to the State House, and it can take a really long time, and not because there's some ill intention, it's just a different process up there. So I think this was a great way of compromising on an issue that we thought was extremely important and moving it along. And if we say accessibility and transparency and accountability are important, then it's important that we do something. And this, I think, does that very well. I will add, and just echoing what you were saying, Councilor Wu, I think this levels the playing field in terms of access to power. And allowing folks to be able to come into this space and feel as though whatever they're sharing with us has the same weight as someone else who may have a financial interest in what they're telling us. So I think this was a great compromise, and look forward to voting in the affirmative on this. So thank you. At this time, anyone else looking to speak on these dockets? Okay, we'll take them separately. So starting with docket 0101, Councilor Flaherty, who is the chair of the Committee on Government Operations, recommends acceptance of the committee report and passage of docket 0101 in a new draft. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. Nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0101 has been passed in a new draft. Moving on to docket 0987. Councilor Flaherty, who's the chair of the Committee on Government Operations, recommends acceptance of the committee report and passage of docket 0987 in a new draft. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0987 has been passed.
Docket number 0238, order for hearing on implementing a curbside composting program in Boston.
Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. It is a well-worn trope that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I am profoundly pleased to tell you that Councilor Pressy and I have been doing this for a while, and we did indeed get a different result at Monday's hearing. We had a tremendous hearing on curbside composting with Chris Osgood, mayoral panel initially, then we had some experts, some academics. We had Ciro, which is a cooperative composting company. We had Bootstrap Compost, a startup based in Jamaica Plain, which now has 2,000 clients throughout Boston and Greater Boston, and it really underscored the desire for this. Now, I know we have a lot to get to through at today's meeting, so I will be as brief as I can, but I just want to talk about sort of the practical reason why composting is important. We have 200, as Bostonians, we discard 240,000 tons of trash every year. That includes recycling, that includes yard debris, that includes regular trash. It's trash day in my house today, and we had our big blue bin out, our yard waste, and then regular trash bags. So about 240,000 tons every year. Of that, 50,000 tons are yard waste, which means 190,000 tons are considered trash. Of that 190,000 tons, 1/3 or 60,000 tons are organics. They can be composted. Now that is significant. More of our trash that can be composted is going to the trash right now than our significantly more, 10,000 tons per year more than all of our recycling. So we're going to address it 2 weeks. And the final sort of math equation is of the 60,000 tons of organics, 40,000 tons are considered food waste, 20,000 tons are created yard waste. Now in the budget that the last year's fiscal budget, through efforts of Councilor McCarthy and I, we were able to increase the number of yard waste pickups. That will be increased to 2 additional weeks next year. That's going to go to 20 weeks. That's going to help with the yard waste pickup. But getting more composted organics or food is going to, in the pipeline. So Chris Osgood said that there's a 4-part process they're looking at right now. One is expanding disposals. The other is expanding Project Oscar, which has worked well, but it's not as prevalent as it should be. The third is to better support small businesses. And fourth, and this is what I was most excited about, figuring out how we can have a city-led curbside composting program. Now, I don't want to get up hopes too high yet. It's not a done deal yet, but they are doing a cost-benefit analysis. I am quite confident that the CBA will show how this is good for the ratepayer. A tipping fee for a ton of trash is at its lowest $70 per ton. So of those 240,000 tons, less the 50,000 yard waste, so 190,000 tons, we're paying on average $70 per ton. for typical debris and trash. The highest tipping point for organics is $35. So at the highest market for, or the best consumer market for trash and the worst consumer market for organics, we are still paying double. So this is not going to save us millions of dollars. This is going to save us tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars over the long run. So we're looking at it. They're doing a cost-benefit analysis, but it was the most positive hearing that I have had in my 8 years as it relates to curbside composting. Thank you again to Councilor Presley for her partnership and leadership on this issue and so many of you who participated. I ask that this matter remain in committee for now. We're going to check in again towards the end of the summer. This dovetails nicely in Mayor Walsh's Zero Waste initiative, but this is something that I really hope can be implemented in the not-too-distant future. We also, just as a point of caution, heard from some folks about some of the shortfalls with Cambridge and other municipalities that have basically put some of the composting and combined it with sludge, and it doesn't achieve the same goal that we want. And obviously, the administration and all of us are united to make sure that if we do it and when we do it, we will do it right. So thank you, Madam President.
No, thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Councilor Presley, do you want to speak on this? Okay. At this time, docket 0238 will remain in the Committee on Environment, Sustainability, and Parks. Madam Clerk, if we could read dockets 0973 through 0977 together.
Thank you, Madam President. Docket number 0973, message and order for annual appropriation and tax order for the FY 2019. Docket number 0974, message and order for an annual appropriation for the school department for FY 2019. Docket number 0975, message and order approving appropriation of $40 million to the other post-employment benefits known as OPEB Liability Trust Fund, established under Section 20 of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 32B, Section 20, as added by Chapter 479 of the Acts of 2008. Docket number 0976, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to appropriate the amount of $53,802,817 from the city's capital grant fund in order to provide funding for various transportation and public realm improvements. These projects are aligned with the goals of Go Boston 2030, the city's transportation master plan. The funds shall be credited to the Capital Grant Fund from the Parking Meter Fund. And docket number 0977, message and order approving an appropriation of $1,600,000 from the Surplus Disposition Fund, credited to the Capital Fund for the development of master plans, architectural and engineering plans, and design, and for the implementation of such plans and designs for Boston Common, Franklin Park, and the completion of the Emerald Necklace.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilor Siomo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to ask unanimous consent to speak on the entire FY19 budget, including the capital budget, currently before the body as assigned for further action and soon to be called for a second vote.
Any objections? Councilor Siomo, you have the floor.
Thank you. The FY19 budget review included 29 hearings on the capital and operating budget and details on departmental budgets, dedicated public testimony, and written testimony from all departments on their recommended budgets. I want to thank my colleagues for their commitment to a thorough review of this budget over the course of 2 months and over 60 hours of public hearings. I'd like to start by thanking the mayor, his administration, particularly the budget team, our CFO, Emma Handy, as well as Justin Starrett and Jim Williams, working to coordinate all of the schedules with our amazing central staff, Kate Sullivan, Michelle Goldberg, Cora Montrond, who work countless hours to provide us the information that we need to make informed decisions. I'd like to thank my own staff as well, Tom, Kevin, Daniel, and Deb, who is now on maternity leave, but was here through most of the budget process. It was a great process, I think. I want to thank especially our newer members who really jumped in and really provided some really thoughtful feedback to the administration, to me as the chair, and to inform the process. And we had the resubmittal budget hearing yesterday, and those changes are reflected due to our participation in this process. I can't forget, of course, the people behind the scenes, too. Kerry Jordan, superstar. We've been doing this together now for 10 years. Just an amazing worker. Our newest member in behind the scenes, Candace Morales as well. Just phenomenal. They make us all look a lot better than we are. So at this point, the dockets currently before us represent the resubmitted budget, which contain important additions to the original proposal, such as the funding for 80 quality pre-K seats, doubling the Youth Development Grant Program, increased funding for Elder Nutrition Program, addition of a staff member to the Office of Immigrant Advancement, a new mounted park ranger for the Parks Department, which now include 2 new park rangers from the earlier submittal to the resubmittal, equity and inclusion staff for the Office of Economic Development, funding for workplace sensitivity training. Overall, the budget makes important investments in transportation with the additional transit team to work with the MBTA to improve public transit. BTD will also be implementing a number of pedestrian and cyclist initiatives through Go Boston 2030 and Vision Zero. This includes funding for safety improvements at Mattapan Square, Tremont Street, Rosendale Square, and Walnut Avenue in Roxbury. Boston Fire Department will be training 60 new recruits this fall. Emergency Medical Services will have 20 new full-time employees to address increasing call volumes. EMS will also have a second ambulance in East Boston for the day and evening shifts. The Public Health Commission will add a new neighborhood trauma team in Dorchester, which will bring the total number in the city to 6. They will also be hiring additional full-time employees to expand front door triage services at our city shelters. The Boston Centers for Youth and Families will increase opportunities for girls to participate in the Girls Leadership Corps during the summer. BCYF will also build on a successful inclusionary after-school program for children with visible and hidden disabilities. The Office of Immigrant Advancement will partner with community groups and the Attorney General's office to provide clinics for individuals with temporary protected status. The office will also run a pro bono clinic to offer confidential consultation on immigration law. They will also expand immigrant information corners at 2 YMCA locations, both East Boston and Dorchester. The Inspectional Services Department will continue to streamline the permitting process by implementing the Board of Appeal variance request, document submission, permit application, and online payment feature to further improve efficiencies in the department. The Department of Neighborhood Service Development will produce 2,650 new units of housing to keep pace with the Boston 2030 goal of 53,000 new units, to keep pace with population growth and reduce pressures on rents and housing prices. The Boston Public Schools, with a $51 million increase from fiscal year 18, will include funding for additional health and social emotional learning staff, including 8 nurses, 7 psychologists, 4 social workers, and a director of social work services to support students' well-being and academic success. BPS will also expand successful district-wide programs like Excellence for All and Becoming a Man. Additional funding will go towards supporting students experiencing homelessness. The fiscal year 19 budget supports significant reforms, efficiencies, and initiatives that are important to the residents of Boston. It funds innovative programs and progressive policies that reflect responsible budget practices and spending that includes payment towards our other post-employment benefits consistent with previous years. Aggressive management of our long-term liabilities and strategic budget management have given us a responsible and sustainable budget. I strongly recommend passage of the fiscal year 19 budget in its entirety, and thank you all again for participating in a great process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Siomo. Anyone wishing to speak on the budget? Councilor Essaibi-George, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
I'd like to first thank the chair of the Committee on Ways and Means, Councilor Siomo, and his staff for the work that they put in to prepare for these hearings and to get us through this 36 hearings or so process. I'd also like to thank members of my team who work so hard to help me be prepared for these hearings, especially Jessica Rodriguez, who I put a lot of work into the budget. She does a lot more. She simplifies the process for me so much. And then also central staff, especially Kate Sullivan, and the work that she's done, not just this year, but year after year after year. We will certainly miss her expertise and her knowledge of this process. Thank you, Kate. I know that for central staff as well as the administration, it's not easy working with 13 different offices in their respective offices. I know I'm not always the most easy person to work with, so I want to make sure that I thank them personally. I'd also like to thank the Boston Student Advisory Council. We were able to include them this year in the budget process in a very different way. We had both written submission, written testimony, in-person testimony, and then a round of video testimony, which was very cool and a great way to include them. And I'd like to thank and wish well Keandre McClay, who is the school committee member from the Boston Student Advisory Council, who was very active in sort of preparing for that process. I am proud to say that I've been able to participate in all of the FY19 budget hearings, and as a councilor at large, the budget process is an important time to reflect on all the issues impacting the residents of the city of Boston. It's also an opportunity to know what constituents have been advocating for all year round, that they have their voice during this process. Although it doesn't end when the budget cycle ends, it continues. It's important that their voices are part of this, especially as I think of my work as chair on the Committee for Education, as well as the Committee on Homelessness, Mental Health, and Recovery. We have to realize that our spending priorities directly impact our ability to get our policy decisions, our policy desires done. I've spent a lot of time reflecting on these votes, and although I believe there is still much work to do, I will be voting yes today on our operating capital and Boston Public Schools budget. I accept that we are making great investments in both the capital and operating budgets, from our parks receiving $18 million in upgrades and renovations, for our capital plans at Franklin Park and the Boston Common, as well as our need and our response to additional mounted rangers. For public safety, we need 30 additional police officers, as well as the new cadet class coming in, as well as our work to support the phasing in of police body-worn cameras. We also need 2 firehouses. That's great. I'm really excited about that. That's been a long time coming, as well as our support and increase in investment for our EMS system, both in ambulances and personnel. As chair of the Committee on Homelessness, Mental Health, and Recovery, I applaud the $1.8 million investment to the Permanent Engagement Center, as well as the investment we're making as a city to replace the Long Island Bridge and the work that needs to happen out there. I'm also on board with investing the $250,000 to add 2 recovery service youth prevention program managers, and know that we need to, in order to respond to some of the issues around homelessness, double the size of the DND's down payment assistance program. As chair of the Committee on Education, we're making some great investments in our schools. I'm excited that we are adding student-facing nurses, psychologists, and social workers to our classrooms, to our school buildings. Every child in Boston should have access to school-based professionals that will account for their health emotionally, mentally, and physically. Although we are not fulfilling the commitment I think we need in making sure that one nurse is in every building, that we do have school psychologists in every building, as well as guidance counselors and social works. We've got work to do. We are making steps in the right direction. And that will help make us more safe, make our kids more safe, our faculty more safe. And I am relieved that we are responding to the need for school safety with an increase from the initial plans of $2.4 million to $5 million in the capital investment to upgrade external safety measures for our school buildings, including door locks, cameras, access to our buildings. These are great achievements and all worthy of support and celebration, but there's still a lot of work to do. For example, Build BPS continues to be a problem. The idea of upgrading our schools is great and it is needed, but the process is a mess. There is a desire for a public and transparent conversation, and I hope after the approval of today's budget that BPS will get to it. That spending plan needs to be articulated clearly for the goals and the projects that are planned over the next 10 years. I also want to emphasize the need to right-size the best clinicians that we worked so hard for a year ago. We worked for and had the support for 4 best clinicians. The funding didn't help us realize 4 full positions. We need to get to that, and I look forward to working with the administration in this upcoming fiscal year to make sure that happens. We also need a plan for our libraries across our schools. We've got a lot of work left to do on libraries and look forward to supporting that work as well as supporting our student athletes, who I will talk a little bit later in our hearing today, to support them in making sure that they have access to great facilities and that they have the ability to get to games and practices. And I could go on and on and on because there are still so many things that we need to get to. And I look forward over the next couple of months that we have an opportunity to refocus our efforts in what's been missing in the capital investments, in both operating investments at the schools and in our other departments across the city. And also know that through those conversations, we need to make sure that we're finding an opportunity for savings. So although I will be voting yes today, there is still work to be done, and I look forward to doing it. It doesn't end because we've supported the budget today. And I look forward to working with all of you, of course, the Chair of Ways and Means, through our work in all of our committees to get this done. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Essaibi-George. Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. A wise man recently said to me, remember, it's not your money. And that's something that I take with me, and I know each and every one of you do as well. This is the most important role that we have. We are voting today on a $3.3 billion budget, and I know that each and every one of us takes that responsibility very seriously. We all participate in the hearings, we all ask questions, we all work together, we try to advocate for issues that are in policies that are important to us, and this is a very important day, the most important vote we take each and every year, in my opinion. Having said that, I think that this is one of the better budgets across the board that I have dealt with in my time on this body. It's not perfect. There's always room for improvement. Of course there is. I think the mayor and the administration would agree to that as well. But this is a sound, solid, fiscally responsible, and effective budget. And it's for that reason that I will be voting yes on the operating, BPS, and the capital budget. Very briefly, wanted to thank again, of course, the Chairman of Ways and Means, Councilor Siomo, as well as Councilor Essaibi-George, who was at his left every time, and particularly central staff for the great work that they did. I'm excited to see an investment in not only police and fire, but EMS classes as well. I'm excited to see new firehouses, the first time new firehouses have been built in this city in, I think, my lifetime, or close to it. Transportation, seeing $5 million in new capital operational funding for sidewalk, roadway, signals repair, expanding the strategic bike network, finally getting Hubway, or Blue Bike, I should say, in West Roxbury and in Rosendale is something Council McCarthy and I are delighted to see. Seeing the city lead as it relates to addiction services, the funding of the Long Island Bridge, and the vision and the development of a long-term recovery campus, that is significant. And that is something that I am among the most proud to vote for included in this budget. housing is obviously an issue, and I see some of my dear friends who are advocating, and I share their desire, and this body will continue to push for. Councillor Zakim's been a leader on this, on city rent subsidies, but there is, and we don't have as much as we should, or we don't have what we need in that regard, but there is new housing through IDP and linkage, doubling down payment assistance program, as well as beefing up staff to make sure that we can particularly focus on low-income residents and seniors as well. I could go on and on as it relates to how we're going to invest in parks and playgrounds, something that's very important to me, particularly Millennium Park in West Roxbury, Jamaica Pond in Jamaica Plain, how we're going to really support arts and culture. This is really a well thought out, a responsible and effective budget. As it relates to BPS, I think seeing the need demonstrated, unfortunately, across the country, and our real support of clinicians, social workers, school counselors, not just guidance counselors, but pupil adjustment counselors as well as nurses, is a significant investment in BPS. I'm glad to see that. I have had issues with BPS in the past. I think that this is a better budget than we've seen. I think it's $51 million over last year. But there's still a lot of work we need to do, and I'm hopeful that given the news of the resignation of Superintendent Chang and the naming of an interim superintendent and then a final superintendent, that we have a real opportunity. Well, we have an opportunity, and I am hopeful that we can work collaboratively together to address the needs, make the tough decisions, work together. Most importantly, have a robust ecumenical process, including our students, including our parents, including the folks that have made BPS as good as it is. We have a lot of work to do, but these budgets are going to help us get there. So I will say in conclusion that given sort of some of the national uncertainty as it relates to the economy, as it relates to trade wars, as it relates to seeing the national debt balloon at the highest level since World War II, it is incumbent upon cities to truly run strong and responsible budgets, and that is precisely what is before us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I wanted to first thank the chair of the committee. I want to thank you for your patience, for your guidance, for your mentorship. You had mentioned that there are three of us who are very new to this process, and you have made yourself incredibly available to I'm sure all of us, but especially me, in helping me understand what's going on and what's the point of all of this beyond advocacy, but looking at the bigger picture. And I want to thank you for that, and I will thank you in advance for your continued mentorship, as I'm sure I will need it. And I wanted to also thank the central staff and all of the people who have worked incredibly hard. Again, to actually all of my colleagues, it's the conversations, it's the guidance, it's the perspective that you've all been able to provide that I am incredibly grateful for. And this is my first budget vote. This is my first time going through this incredible process. And in a city that I absolutely love, that's given me opportunities that I've never had or never thought I would have, and doing a job that I am honored to have and fought hard to have. And so I didn't sleep last night because I'm conflicted. I'm extremely conflicted because half of me comes from the world of advocacy, and I cut my teeth fighting for people without a voice. I cut my teeth at Greater Boston Legal Services fighting for individuals who are scared, who are alone, who are not seen, who are not valued. And we've had incredible success in gathering and moving and having a movement behind them and giving them a voice. And I learned so much from those advocates about how to be an advocate and an activist. And then there's the political me that looks at the practical realities, the needs in my district, the potholes that need to be filled, the schools that need the funding, the master plan that needs to happen. And I see all of the practical things that need to happen and what is connected to this budget. So I didn't sleep last night thinking about how my advocate me would be so disappointed in the political me if I voted yes for this budget. I look at this budget and I think about the women who are dealing with sexual assault. I think about them and I wonder if this budget truly has responded to that need and that cry. I wonder if this budget is a true response to the fact that if I were a Boston firefighter, my chances of sexual assault would go up. Does this budget respond to that? That is my question. Is there a sense of urgency in this budget to that? And yes, the numbers may be small, but the implications are huge. We are not talking about anymore individual pockets of money that go to deal with racism or training. We are talking about a true commitment from this administration to do something. and it's not $500,000 worth of doing something. It is a true commitment to not just hire women and people of color to stand in front and to deal with the systemic issues, and then to be fired if they don't, or be held accountable if they don't, when the real question is, in the system that we have, are we challenging it? Are we looking at the list? Are we demanding more? Yes, we have an issue that much of what we have to deal with is state level. I'm looking for leadership that challenges at the state level. Does this budget, does this reflect that? The answer is no. And so the question I have, again, with all of the good things that my colleagues have mentioned that this budget does, looking at myself, looking at the advocate me, looking at how I would look at these women who look and talk just like the women I represented just 2 years ago, the sexual harassment victims, the nannies, the house cleaners, all of them speak in the same voice. It doesn't matter the title or the job that they have. All of them speak with the same fear, concern, and so I say to those women, all of them, who many have not come forward, I hear you, I believe you. And I want this budget to reflect that as well. I say this to all of the folks who are also struggling to stay in the city financially. I hear you, I believe you, I see you, I will fight for you. To the administration's credit, this budget does demonstrate a step towards that. So I am conflicted to this moment about this budget. I'm conflicted about how I can look those women in the face, my clients whose voices I hear to this day, crying, frightened, alone. I wonder how I can look them in the face if I vote for this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Zakhem, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to join in the chorus thanking and congratulating Councillor Siomo on another successful hearing, several dozen, as is the norm for this body, as we do dig in to what every year becomes a larger and larger City of Boston budget, our essential staff, and to the individual staffs, the advocates, people who have been here and lent their voice to this process is incredibly important for us, and certainly for me, to understand the impacts. I'm pleased with some of the additions to this budget. Some of the things we've been pushing for a long time have been included, some were not. I want to thank the mayor and his budget team and the administration both for their attendance and participation at the hearings, explaining, sometimes defending decisions that were in the budget that we may not have agreed with, but it's always been a constructive process. And I also want to note, as someone who used to be a municipal bond attorney, the impact, the positive impact, I think, of our careful fiscal stewardship of the city budget. As we see, we continue to have high credit ratings. We continue to save money. I believe in the last bond offering, we saved over $1 million because the city, this body, the mayor's office have been careful stewards of the public fisc, which is incredibly important. A couple specific things in this budget. I'm very pleased. I want to publicly thank the administration for adding 2 permanent full-time park ranger positions. That's something that we've been pushing for in the Parks Department budget for quite some time, that I know many advocates from across the city, friends groups of the parks, conservancies have been pushing for, both because it's, I think, an issue of safety and maintenance in our parks, but our park rangers are great ambassadors for the city of Boston. When people come, whether it's the Boston Common or any of the parks around the neighborhoods throughout this city, those are folks they can engage with, have a positive experience with as tourists, as residents. It's incredibly important. I'm glad to see that we continue to increase our funding for Boston Public Schools. There's virtually no obligation of a city more important than educating the next generation, our next generation of children. I'm glad to see a continued focus on that. I will note, as I have in every single budget since I've been here, that we still do not have a downtown K-8 school. That is something that, as I think more and more families desire to stay in the city, are trying to stay in the city, are balancing the costs and the benefits. There are a lot of reasons, I think, why folks will choose to move outside of a city. It's unfortunate that in a lot of cases, particularly in District 8, one of those is that there's not a closely located elementary K-8 school for their students. I also see here advocates for city-funded rent vouchers and subsidies. This is something that, as Councilor O'Malley noted, we've been pushing for several years. And I think it's something that we cannot forget, that while we do have the CPA money, and I was thrilled to join the rest of this body and appropriate the first round of grants, that's an important funding source. We need to be looking at what we can do in direct subsidy to help people who are struggling in the city of Boston, to help people stay here. We do have a booming economy. Things are going well in the city, but that has not been touched everyone has not been touched by that. Everyone has not been lifted up by that. And while it's important that this budget does address many of these issues and takes important steps forward, we need to continue working on that, and I will continue to work on that moving forward. I also just quickly want to note I'm thrilled to see the increased funding for more classes for our public safety officials and first responders. For a long time, and I know many of my colleagues share this, we really wanted to see more cadets to BPD, making sure that we are addressing public safety issues, but also quality of life issues around our neighborhood that we need more police officers for. The additional funding, the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Advancement, is incredibly important, incredibly timely, and continues this city's tradition, I think, of leading on civil rights and outreach to others. And of course, our additional funding for transportation and Vision Zero improvements is so important, particularly in the districts I represent, where we have some of the riskiest intersections for cyclists and pedestrians. Proud to see renewed commitment to that, or I should say an expanded and continued commitment, because we have been moving in that direction for several years. I look forward to voting in the affirmative on the budget proposals before us. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Zakhem. Others wishing to speak before we vote on the budget? Madam Clerk, actually, can we take just a quick recess? Make sure that we were pulling all the appropriate dockets at the appropriate time. I'm going to speak and say a few words on the budget, and if colleagues change their mind about speaking on the budget, feel free to just press in. I too wanted to thank Councilor Siomo for your leadership through this process, and also your leadership around helping and assisting not just the newer counselors, but also the new counselors who just joined us. Really appreciate you and your partnership in this, as well as your staff and your team members. I too want to thank central staff for their hard work, Michelle and Kate in particular, and of course the central staff team members that sit up here and do the hearings, which are a lot. So thank you to them. And a special thank you to Kate, who's just been remarkable in this process. We are sad to be losing her, but her institutional knowledge will not be lost. She's passed on much of it to Michelle and many others of central staff. So thank you for your leadership. I also want to thank the administration and Emma and Justin for the hard work that they put into this budget. It was their first, and navigating us and shepherding us through this process is not easy. I also want to thank Intergovernmental Relations, IGR, and Neil for all of the back and forth. We were just talking earlier today at the elevator about the budget, so thank you, Neil. And I just felt compelled to say a little bit more. I will be voting in the affirmative for the operating and capital budget. I echo the concerns, or I should say I echo what my colleagues have said are good investments, which are body cameras, the Youth Development Fund. I've been fighting for that to make sure that there's a line item in our budget that allows organizations that serve young people in the city of Boston to be able to apply to that to the city for funding. That didn't exist before, and it wasn't a transparent process. We had over 120 organizations that applied for the first round of funding, and that line item only contained $250,000. But through partnership with the mayor, it's been doubled, and that's a good thing. I know organizations are excited about that. I also want to applaud the additional position at the Office of Immigrant Advancement. Colleagues here advocated for that, and I don't know that we would have that position and it would be funded if it weren't for that advocacy. So I want to thank my colleagues for their leadership, and Moya as well, and Alejandra. Given what we're talking about nationally, it was really important that they have an additional funded position to do their work, and they probably need more. Body cameras. This has been an issue even before I joined the council, not just led by Councilor Yancey, my predecessor, and Councilor Jackson, but many others on the council. Now we have $2 million to be able to start a full implementation program for the police department. I also want to applaud the additional investments in slow streets. And it's at the top of the list when it comes to constituent service cases, people saying, the cars are speeding up and down my street and nothing is changing. And it can't just be that we add additional signage. We also need to change the infrastructure. So the investments in the Slow Streets program, I applaud, and I am grateful that it is happening. I think, I'm still torn because I wanted to see additional investments in the transportation department, additional investments in the Slow Streets program. At the hearing, I said, this is at the top of the list when it comes to folks who are calling our office about what are we going to do to the streets and the infrastructure in order that people can walk and cycle safely down there, and safely in their neighborhoods. And I think that, along with housing, I'm looking at the folks here who've been advocating for years for the voucher program. I think all of these problems, frankly, are solvable. I think they're doable, and I think that we do have adequate resources in our budget in this city to solve them. And so for that reason, I am voting no on the Boston Public Schools budget. And I've thought long and hard about this. It was not an easy decision. I think BPS has adequate resources to provide our students and their parents with an excellent education. I think the question is, what are we doing with the resources we have? I always, I think many of us use this example of the transportation budget. It's $120 million, and it is skyrocketing as our student population that uses these services declines. And it has been for years. And I think if we continue to use the same strategy of just allowing it to keep going up and not looking at the ideas or the possibilities of doing something different in that space, we're going to be losing more money to transportation that we could be reinvesting in other programs that BPS needs. Not just some nurses or social emotional supports for some of our schools, but nurses and social emotional supports for all of our schools. Every school leader should have access to nurses, social emotional partnerships, or other things to serve their student body. And as it currently exists, that doesn't happen today. And I think we need to think about how do we employ a different strategy to get the results that we want. In addition, I think this idea of, what does it mean to hold a department accountable? If this was a private sector and we said to a division in that company, save me $10 million in a year, and they came back and said we saved half of that, I don't think that we'd be giving them additional millions of dollars. We would be asking them the tough questions of why weren't you able to save that $10 million that you agreed to? What held you back from realizing those savings? And so this idea of continuing to give money, I think, is a real problem. I think it also pushes us, or should push us, to think about the limits on the council's budget review authority. If we're able to review the budget as our counterparts say in the State House, line by line, to manipulate each line, not just vote up or down on the whole budget, which we're going to do today, but to go line by line and to question those resources, and to question where they're going, and to question how the money is being used, for what purpose, to question whether or not they're being effectively used, to hold departments accountable not just for their overall budget, but for each line, then this body, I think, really needs to think about the authority we currently have, and if we should be having conversations about changing that. If we're truly going to be viewed as a legislative branch of government, this idea of just voting up or down on a $3.29 billion budget, to me, is unacceptable. I was at a conference with other council presidents from other cities, major cities across the country, and they were shocked that that was our authority, and that's all the authority we sort of had around the budget. And they couldn't believe that we go through all of these hearings and conversations to vote up or down on our budget. Some actually said, why do you have all those hearings? Don't you have a sense of how you're going to vote at the beginning, up or down? So why do you go through the process? What's the point? And on the plane ride back, I really had to give that some tremendous thought. If this body is truly going to be valued, and I think it should, given the work that each and every one of my colleagues does, and if we're really going to be able to execute our responsibility when it comes to our budget, when it comes to reviewing the budget, when it comes to executing our responsibility to our constituents, but also to the charter of the City of Boston, we really need to have a conversation about our powers that exist currently. And that may mean a commission or someone having this conversation. Otherwise, we're going to be continuing to do the same thing and not able to pull other levers to realize the things that we know our constituents need. So right now, I'm pulling the only lever I think I have, which is to say, no, I'm not accepting the BPS school committee budget because I want our strategy to be different. I want us to save money on transportation so that either we reinvest it in programming for BPS or we take $5 million of the $120 million transportation budget and we do rent vouchers. Or we take $10 million of that and we have more slow streets programs so that people can see changes not in 3 or 5 years, but in 1 or 2 years. Or that Public Works has the resources to be able to buy certain machinery to allow us to remove the snow like Canada does. All my constituents talk about snow removal in Canada. I think Public Works would like to do that too, but I think they're like, what resources do I have to buy new equipment? So I really think if we're going to execute our responsibility and be effective in it, that we should have a conversation about the limited authority that this body has when it comes to our largest and biggest responsibility, which is to review the budget in a meaningful way and to ensure that it meets the needs of all the constituents in the City of Boston, and that it does so to the satisfaction not just of us, but also our constituents. And lastly, I'll add, we were just talking about transparency, accessibility, and accountability earlier today. We currently have a budget process that requires us to negotiate, and to negotiate usually behind the scenes, and to make compromises that maybe we wouldn't want to, and outside of the space of public view. And so how would changing the way in which we review our budget allow for participation in a greater way by the people in the public and allow us to actually be more transparent, more accessible, or more accountable in our responsibility? I felt it was important to say that, and maybe I think that now given this new role and what I'm able to see. And also I see the advocacy of each of my colleagues and what they would like to see in the budget, and not everyone got what they wanted, and I think this is a time to have a larger conversation about what this body can and can't do, and to remind even our constituents that we only have so much power to do certain things. So that's all I have to say. If anyone else would like to speak on this, feel free. At this time, Madam Clerk, we will take each docket separately, starting with docket 0973. And we will do a roll call vote.
Thank you, Madam President. Docket number 0973, operating budget. Councilor Baker. Councilor Campbell.
Yes.
Councilor Campbell, yes. Councilor Siomo. Councilor Siomo, yes. Councilor Edwards. Councilor Edwards, no. Councilor Essaibi-George. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry. You were shaking your head. I'm so sorry. Councilor Edwards, yes. Councilor Essaibi-George. Yes. Councilor Essaibi-George, yes. Councilor Flaherty. Yes. Councilor Flaherty, yes. Councilor Flynn. Yes. Councilor Flynn, yes. Councilor Janey. Yes. Councilor Janey, yes. Councilor McCarthy. Yes. Councilor McCarthy, yes. Councilor O'Malley. Yes. Councilor O'Malley, yes. Councilor Presley. Yes. Councilor Presley, yes. Councilor Wu. Councilor Wu, yes. And Councilor Zachem. Yes. Councilor Zachem, yes. And Councilor Baker, operating. Yes. Councilor Baker, yes. Madam President, we have 13 votes in support of docket number 0973.
Docket 0973 has been passed.
Docket number 0974, school budget. Councilor Baker.
Yes.
Councilor Baker, yes. Councilor Campbell.
No.
Councilor Campbell, no. Councilor Siomo. Yes. Councilor Siomo, yes. Councilor Edwards. Councilor Edwards, yes. Councilor Essaibi-George. Yes. Councilor Essaibi-George, yes. Councilor Flaherty. Yes. Councilor Flaherty, yes. Councilor Flynn. Yes. Councilor Flynn, yes. Councilor Janey. Yes. Councilor Janey, yes. Councilor McCarthy. Yes. Councilor McCarthy, yes. Councilor O'Malley. Yes. Councilor O'Malley, yes. Councilor Presley. Yes. Counselor Presley, yes. Counselor Wu. Counselor Wu, yes. And Counselor Zachem. Counselor Zachem, yes. Madam President, docket number 0974 received 12 votes in the affirmative, 1 vote in the negative, and has passed.
Thank you. Docket 0974 has been passed.
Docket number 0975, OPEB. Counselor Baker.
Yes.
Counselor Baker, yes. Counselor Campbell.
Yes.
Counselor Campbell, yes. Counselor Siomo.
Yes.
Counselor Siomo, yes. Counselor Edwards. Counselor Edwards, yes. Counselor Essaibi-George. Yes. Counselor Essaibi-George, yes. Counselor Flaherty.
Yes.
Counselor Flaherty, yes. Counselor Flynn. Counselor Flynn, yes. Counselor Janey.
Yes.
Counselor Janey, yes. Counselor McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor McCarthy, yes. Counselor O'Malley.
Yes.
Counselor O'Malley, yes. Counselor Presley. Counselor Presley, yes. Counselor Wu. Counselor Wu, yes. And Counselor Zachem.
Yes.
Counselor Zachem, yes. Madam President, docket number 0975 received a unanimous vote and is passed.
Docket 0975 has been passed.
Docket number 0976, Counselor Baker.
Yes.
Counselor Baker, yes. Counselor Campbell.
Yes.
Counselor Campbell, yes. Counselor Siomo.
Yes.
Counselor Siomo, yes. Counselor Edwards. Counselor Edwards, yes. Counselor Essaibi-George. Yes. Counselor Essaibi-George, yes. Counselor Flaherty.
Yes.
Counselor Flaherty, yes. Counselor Flynn. Yes. Counselor Flynn, yes. Counselor Janey. Yes. Counselor Janey, yes. Counselor McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor McCarthy, yes. Counselor O'Malley.
Yes.
Counselor O'Malley, yes. Counselor Presley. Counselor Presley, yes. Counselor Wu. Counselor Wu, yes. And Counselor Zachem.
Yes.
Counselor Zachem, yes. Madam President, docket number 0976 has received a unanimous vote.
Docket 0976 has been passed.
Oops, thank you, Paul. Thank you. Docket number 0977, Counselor Baker.
Yes.
Counselor Baker, yes. Counselor Campbell.
Yes.
Counselor Campbell, yes. Counselor Siomo.
Yes.
Counselor Siomo, yes. Counselor Edwards. Counselor Edwards, yes. Counselor Essaibi-George. Yes. Counselor Essaibi-George, yes. Counselor Flaherty.
Yes.
Counselor Flaherty, yes. Counselor Flynn.
Yes.
Counselor Flynn, yes. Counselor Janey. Yes. Counselor Janey, yes. Counselor McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor McCarthy, yes. Counselor O'Malley.
Yes.
Counselor O'Malley, yes. Counselor Presley. Counselor Presley, yes. Counselor Wu. Counselor Wu, yes. And Counselor Zachem. Counselor Zachem, yes. Madam President, docket number 0977 has received a unanimous vote and is passed.
Docket 0977 has been passed. Moving on to motions, orders, and resolutions.
Docket number 1039, Councilor Campbell offered the following ordinance amending CBC 2-8.3, certain city council personnel salaries.
This docket 0139, is to change the range of salaries so that our central staff director has more flexibility in terms of paying folks who are either applying, recruiting, or I should say recruiting new talent, or paying our existing employees what they might deserve. So this just changes the ranges of these salary ranges as they currently exist. At this time, the chair seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 1039. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1039 has been passed.
Docket number 1040, Councilor Essaibi-George offered the following order for a hearing regarding vacant affordable housing units and improving access to those units in the city of Boston.
Councilor Essaibi-George, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I do apologize to my colleagues for submitting this for today. If we had known about it 2 weeks ago, we would have done it prior to today and enjoy just the focus on today for our budget hearing. But it's a follow-up to a previous hearing. Last year, we held a hearing regarding the work that the BPDA, the D&D and DeWitt has done to try to streamline and support their work to streamline the process of accessing a lot of our affordable housing lotteries, both for rental and ownership opportunities. And through those efforts, we set out to make sure that that access point was not just present, but that it was something that we could do and that our residents could access easier. And we continue to face some challenges with that work. It's an expensive process. It requires a number of partners at the table. And through that process, we were always aware that there were a number of vacant affordable units across the city that took a little bit longer than others to get filled, to be occupied. But just recently, we were made aware of the true magnitude of the number of units, both rental and affordable ownership opportunities that are across the city. And it appears that that number is actually 839. And those units are associated with 37 projects. And as the city grows, those units are meant to offer an opportunity for some of our lower income earners to access a piece of the growth that the city has here right now in Boston. It is an opportunity to balance in a very small way the expense it costs to live in our city. It's a requirement, as all of you know, for developers to have a portion of their units be affordable. And when we understand and find out that there are actually 839 units potentially, both rental and ownership, that are available, that have not been occupied, it says to me that we need to do better as a city, that we need to streamline this process, that we need to bring it into the public view, understand what's broken, and realize how we can fix it. We've got a number of questions that I hope a hearing will bring to light. Specific to these units, how many are rental, how many are ownership? How many currently have a certificate of occupancy? And how long does it truly take to build, to get certificate of occupancy, and then get and create a real opportunity for one of our residents to either rent or own one of these affordable units? It is an unfortunate, I think, reality that we are seeing this many units that are unoccupied across our neighborhoods in this city. So I look forward to an expedited hearing and a resolution, and to the celebration of potentially 839 families realizing an opportunity for either an affordable rental unit or an ownership opportunity in our city. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Essaibi-George. Anyone else looking to speak on this matter or add their name? Councilor Presley, you have the floor.
I just rise to commend the maker. She's had laser focus on this particular issue, and it's just a reminder to us in government that oftentimes we have things that work on paper, but that don't work for real people and real lives. And so I look forward to the hearing, and I just rise to commend the maker and wish to have my name added.
Thank you, Councilor Presley. Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Presley, Councilor O'Malley, as well as Councilor Baker, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Janey, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor Wu, Councilor Zakem, Councilor Edwards, as well as the Chair. Docket 1040 will be assigned to the Committee on Housing and Community Development.
Docket number 1041, Councilor Presley offered the following resolution urging state legislature to support Safe Communities Act with specific provisions that would protect families from being separated.
Councilor Presley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to thank advocacy groups like MIRA and Centro Presente and the Brazilian Women's Group and so many others who've been doing the frontline work of immigrant and refugee advocacy work and leading a broad and diverse coalition. I want to thank Councilor Zakem, who filed a resolution supporting the Safe Communities Act last year. This is a very timely resolution. Last week, this body unanimously passed a resolution condemning the current federal zero-tolerance immigration policy that, by my account, and I'm sure you share it, is informed by zero compassion. That policy is separating families at the U.S.-Mexico border. We were moved as a body to show our support and solidarity for immigrant families at the border, and we must do the same for families right here in our own state on Blue Hill Avenue, fighting to keep families intact and to reduce trauma at the border and on Blue Hill Avenue. We have an opportunity to do something locally that would positively benefit the lives of the 6,000 Salvadorians, nearly 5,000 Haitians, also Hondurans and Nepalese with temporary immigration status, immigrants and their families in our city and our Commonwealth. Let's urge our state colleagues who are currently charged with reconciling the House and Senate versions of the Safe Communities Act to include provisions that would protect parents from being torn away from their children. Currently, the Safe Communities Act does not explicitly prohibit the exchange of information between the Department of Corrections and ICE. However, there are amendments that should be enacted, including restricting police from asking about immigration status during routine interactions, barring sheriffs and police from entering into agreements to exchange information otherwise known as 287, ensuring immigrants are informed of their legal rights, and barring Massachusetts from contributing to any discriminatory registry. We have as a body demonstrated strong support for the Safe Communities Act, but advocating and ensuring that these specific provisions are included in the final version will also show our city's leadership and compassion to the families being separated by our broken immigration system here at home and at the border. I move to suspend and pass this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Presley. Councilor Zakhem, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank Councilor Presley for filing this resolution, ask that my name be added. I rise to just wholeheartedly support this, as this body has acted over and over in my time here, and since this current council has been here as well. We've always spoken with one voice when it comes to civil rights, when it comes to protecting our neighbors, regardless of their background, regardless of their legal status, and we need to do that again today. 2018, we were at a point in this country's history where we are going to be asked 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, 50 years from now, what were you doing when this was happening? What were you doing when the Trump administration was using our federal law enforcement, using immigration and customs enforcement to persecute people, to separate families, to close our borders, to reject American values? And while unfortunately in this room right now, we cannot stop what's happening at the southern border, and we have spoken out strongly against it, and I'm proud that we have. But we can do something here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, just as we've acted in the city of Boston to prevent law enforcement from cooperating with immigration and customs enforcement, to stop our local law enforcement from holding people based on their immigration status. The state needs to follow suit. It's unacceptable that when folks are in state custody, they can be turned over. Governor Baker has one of his first acts upon coming into office was to reactivate these cooperation agreements with immigration and customs enforcement. The state needs to act. We need to stand up right now. This is not a time when we can be silent. I wish we could do more than this resolution. I wish we could legislate further as we have in the past, but it's up to our colleagues in the State House right now, and they need to see that we support this, that the city of Boston is a city of immigrants. We are a city of freedom. We are a city of democracy. We are a city that is going to stand up for those who may not be able to stand up for themselves right now. So, as I said, I'd like to add my name. I want to thank Councilor Presley. I want to thank the advocates of the Mira Coalition and Central Presente and the thousands and thousands of others who have been standing up, not just down the street at the State House, but across this country to speak for those who need to be spoken for. I think every day, as this horror continues out of Washington, that we do need to think about what we're going to tell our children and our grandchildren we are doing now. I wish we could be doing more today. This is something we can do. This is something we can start, and we must. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zakhem. Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Zakhem's name, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Essaibi-George, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Janey, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, as Councilor Flaherty, as well as Councilor Baker, Councilor Siomo, as well as the chair. At this time, Councilor Presley seeks suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 1041. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1041 has been adopted. Councilor Siomo, for what purpose do you rise?
Can I move for reconsideration on docket 1040 to add my name, Madam President?
Yes. Any objections? Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Siomo's name to Councilor Essaibi-George's docket 1040.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Docket number 1042, Councilors Campbell and Presley offer the following resolution in support of House Bill 38 and Senate Bill 446, opposing concealed carrying reciprocity.
Councilor Presley, you have the floor.
First, I just want to say, I'm not yelling at anyone. I'm simply trying to find my voice here. I feel like I'm speaking in all caps, please, I hope no one takes any offense. I want to thank Council President and D4 City Councilor, a dear friend and a partner in the work of addressing, as all of you have been, the work in addressing the public health crisis and epidemic that is gun violence. Councilor Campbell and I have partnered specifically on pushing the city to have a trauma response and recovery protocol. And of course, since I joined the council, I've been fighting for those supports for those family members who have been impacted by homicide in the city. But what we'd rather do is prevent, I won't even call it a loss of life. Every time this happens, we have a fatality or a shooting that doesn't result in fatality, but where lives are irreparably changed, we're being robbed of a life. And so we must do everything possible to address this public health crisis and epidemic that is gun violence. And so I want to thank Councilor Campbell for co-sponsoring this resolution with me. In Massachusetts, we are considered to have some of the strictest gun violence prevention laws in the country. But at the federal level, there are attempts to circumvent and to erode at the laws and regulations by states when it comes to gun ownership. One of the latest attempts is the Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act of 2017. This law would force law enforcement of one state to enforce the state law from wherever the gun permit is issued, regardless of the deliberations and decisions of that local, state, or municipal government. Massachusetts voters have demanded action on gun violence, and this would undo our work collectively. Now again, gun violence is a public health epidemic, and every life that we are robbed of due to gun violence is in part because of the proliferation of guns and their instant lethal ability. That is why we cannot allow this dangerous and yet very preventable loophole to pass. This legislation, if passed, would weaken the regulations we value, especially in the city and our Commonwealth, by allowing gun owners from states with significantly less stringent regulations to carry weapons in our state and to carry concealed weapons. The massive availability of guns perpetuates more violence in our communities, our places of worship, our schools, and on our city blocks. That is why I urge this body to go on record opposing H.R. 38 and Senate Bill 446, the Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act of 2017, and to call on our federal elected officials to vote against this bill. This is about ensuring that we can continue to build upon the good work that we've done here, preventing criminal firearm trafficking, criminal possession of weapons, and again, the general proliferation of firearms in our public spaces. I move to suspend and pass this resolution. And again, I thank you, Councilor Campbell, for your partnership all these many years on the issue of gun violence and trauma in our communities. And I thank you for your co-sponsorship on this.
Thank you very much, Councilor Presley, and I think you summed it up well. I thank you, too, for your partnership on this. One of the things that we often hear about, of course, from our constituents is the prevalence of guns on our streets, and we often say much of this is either a state issue or a federal issue. So this is one way that we can stand up for something stand up for something, or do something, I should say, on this issue that comes up quite a bit from folks in the community. So thank you, Councilor Presley, for your partnership on this. Anyone looking to speak on this matter, add their name. Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Baker, Councilor Siomo, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Essaibi-George, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Janey, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, and Councilor Zakhem. Councilor Presley seeks suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 1042. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1042 has been passed. Moving on to personnel orders.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. Take your time.
Docket number 1043, Councilor Campbell, offer the following order.
The chair seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 1043. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1043 has been passed.
Docket number 1044, Counsel Campbell for Counsel McCarthy.
Councilor McCarthy seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 1044. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1044 has been passed.
Docket number 1045, Counsel Campbell for Counsel Flaherty.
Councilor Flaherty seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 1045. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1045 has been passed.
Docket number 1046, Counsel Campbell offer the following.
The chair seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 1046. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1046 has been passed. Moving on to the actually, before I do that,
Late files.
I am informed by the clerk that we have 4 late file matters, which in the absence of objection will be added to today's agenda. Hearing and seeing no objection, the 4 late file matters are added. Madam Clerk, if you could read the first.
Thank you. In the City of Boston and City Council, June 25th, 2018, Councilor Andrea J. Campbell offered the following.
This is a personnel matter. The chair seeks suspension of the rules and passage of the first late file matter. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The first late file matter has been passed.
In the City of Boston, Office of Mayor Martin J. Walsh, June 1st, 2018. Dear Ms. Feeney, pursuant to the authority vested in me by the City of Boston Code Ordinance, Chapter 5-5.10, I hereby appoint Tanya Del Rio of 427 Border Street, East Boston, Mass. 02128, Director of Women's Advancement, effective June 11th, 2018. Sincerely, Martin J. Walsh, Mayor.
The second late file matter will be placed on file.
In the City of Boston, the Office of Mayor Martin J. Walsh, June 13th, 2018. Ms. Feeney, pursuant to the authority vested in me by the City of Boston Code Ordinance, Chapter 5-5.10, I hereby appoint William Onahua of 11 Whitman Street, Boston, Mass. 02124, Executive Director of Fair Housing and Equity, effective July 2nd, 2018.
The third,
Sincerely, Martin J. Walsh.
I apologize, Madam Clerk. The third late file matter will be placed on file. Oh, I apologize. I don't think all of you have these late file matters. Okay, we will get those
I
to you.
apologize. The only late file matters missing are the mayors. I'm sorry. We
Okay, so
wrote that down. They should
I'm
have
assuming the
everything
two that
else.
are missing are the 2 appointments for the mayor. We will get those to you guys. But the clerk just read each one word for word, but we can get those to you right now.
Okay.
A physical copy, I apologize, of the 2 late files from the mayor's office that were read into the record by the clerk. Those 2 late file matters will be placed on file. And then the 4th late file matter, Madam Clerk, if you could read that one. And thank you, Ron.
Offered by City Councilor Ayanna Presley. Resolution urging the activation of the Disaster Housing Assistance Program to support Puerto Rican evacuees displaced by Hurricane Maria. Whereas on September 20th, 2017, Puerto Rico was devastated by Hurricane Maria with an estimated death toll of over 4,000, significantly surpassing the official count of 64 and affecting 3 million residents. Therefore, be it resolved that the Boston City Council, in meeting assembled, go on record urging support the activation of the Disaster Housing Assistance Program known as DHAP to stabilize Puerto Ricans evacuees in Massachusetts and throughout the nation who have been displaced by Hurricane Maria, filed on June 27, 2018.
Councilor Presley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. This is a program that was put into effect, that was implemented after Hurricane Sandy and also after Hurricane Katrina. Just to go over a couple of numbers, I mean, we're all aware of the diversity of the city of Boston, the contributions of Latinos, in particular Puerto Ricans. Just wanted to go over some of the numbers. So as of 2016, Massachusetts is the 5th largest Puerto Rican population. Boston accounts for 5.1% of the Puerto Rican population, the 2nd largest in the state. And we are home to the 3rd largest Puerto Rican evacuee population because of weather refugees who have resettled here. So that means there are over 3,300 individuals who have resettled in our Commonwealth since last fall. So I'm asking us to reactivate this program that was implemented after Hurricane Sandy and Hurricane Katrina. I'm asking us to stand in solidarity with the Mass Black and Latino Legislative Caucus. Our Governor Baker has taken action in creating the Massachusetts United for Puerto Rico Fund, which many on this body have supported, which provided over $1 million towards relief efforts. However, it is not enough. Funds are needed to support the increase in school enrollment, assistance for families, and for individuals to find permanent housing. Since last October, FEMA has supported displaced individuals through the Transitional Sheltering Assistance Program, TSA. However, in 3 days, on June 30th, this federal assistance program will expire for individual adults. So we need a state-level extension to July 30th for families and children currently utilizing temporary sheltering in hotels. Again, given the large population of Puerto Ricans in our Commonwealth who have yet to find stable and permanent housing or jobs, the end of TSA, Transitional Sheltering Assistance, could prove to be further devastating to folks who have already been and experienced their fair share of trauma. Many of these families lack the capital or employment opportunities to exit transitional housing on their own. They are sleeping in hotels and unable to find comfortable and permanent accommodations to call home. So again, I'm asking our body to support our colleagues at the State House, in particular the Mass Black and Latino Legislative Caucus, to call for the federal government to reactivate the Disaster Housing Assistance Program, DHAP, which provides long-term relief to victims of Hurricane Maria, including rent subsidies, security deposit assistance, and help with paying utilities. I move to suspend and to pass.
Thank you, Councilor Presley. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I also want to acknowledge the words of Councilor Presley. I had the opportunity to visit Villa Victoria over the weekend and heard from many residents over there about their family members from Puerto Rico that are now here in Boston. So I'd like to respectfully ask my name to be included. I want to thank Councilor Presley for her leadership on this issue. And I stand with the people of Puerto Rico. I have a high concentration of Puerto Ricans in my community, and they're telling me exactly about the struggles they're having coming to Boston, coming to Massachusetts, looking for housing, looking for social services. So I think this is a good step in the right direction. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Flynn's name, if you could add Councilor Edwards, Councilor Essaibi-George, Councilor Siomo, Councilor Janey, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, Councilor Zachem, as well as the chair. Oh, I apologize. If you could also add Councilor Flaherty. At this time, Councilor Baker as well. At this time, Councilor Presley seeks suspension of the rules and adoption of the 4th late file matter. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The 4th late file matter has been adopted. Moving on to the green sheets. Anybody wishing to remove matters from the green sheets may do so now. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to pull docket number 0617 from the green sheets on page 8 of 14.
Okay, Madam Clerk, if you could poll that committee.
Development. Counselor Wu.
Yes.
Counselor Wu, yes. I'm sorry. Sorry. Counselor Baker.
Yes.
Counselor Baker, yes. Counselor Siomo. Yes. Counselor Siomo, yes. Counselor Edwards. Yes. Counselor Edwards, yes. And Counselor Presley.
Yes.
Counselor Presley, yes. There is unanimous consent.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And just to remind me, this is docket 0617, is that correct?
Yes.
So docket 0617 is properly before the council. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
I need to read it.
Oh, never mind. You don't have the floor just yet. Madam Clerk, if you could read docket 0617 into the record, and then Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you. Page
Thank you.
8 of 14, in the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation, docket number 0617. Petition of Local Motion of Boston for a license to operate motor vehicles for the carriage of passengers for hire over certain streets in Boston. Referred to the committee on April 25th, 2018. There was a hearing held on May 25th, 2018.
Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you. I've sort of gone down the jitney rabbit hole with this one, so I'm gonna, it's just more detail than folks need, but the top line is that I'm recommending rejection of this petition because of this particular instance, but there's a larger issue that now needs a lot of attention. So the company Local Motion of Boston submitted a petition at the same hearing that we heard the last one, which we voted on last week and approved. But Local Motion wanted to run a private shuttle on behalf of a specific company between Boston Landing and Fenway, Kenmore area. The shuttle would be, again, for certain employees, it would be at certain rates and this and that, and there are lots of rules as to what the guidelines would be. There were a couple issues about the pickup and drop-off locations being in no stopping zones, or that the administration representatives had problems with. But the biggest issue was that the route was redundant to a public transportation route. So the Framingham-Worcester commuter rail line, now newly opened at Boston Landing, runs roughly along the starting point and the end point. And so the transportation department, even after follow-up, was not comfortable recommending approval because we have enough vehicles on our streets at this point causing congestion and everything to have another private shuttle when the commuter rail route was specifically opened in order to provide a public transit route. That was a recommendation. That is a recommendation that I'm putting forward. That being said, it brings up the larger point that this company decided to come before us and seek a license in good faith and trying to win the contract that the client is putting out there. They noted to me that if they don't get this, and they won't be able to without the license, or they won't move forward without the license, some other transportation company may just bid for that and decide to skip this whole process altogether, and how will we really know? So Ronnie, in particular from my team, has been going back and forth with the clerk's office. We know that the city of Boston has 18, now counting last week's 19 active jitney licenses, and there are far more routes being operated than that across the city. Basically, the jitney laws say that anyone operating vehicles open for passengers for a payment across city streets with a fixed route and start and ending points should come before the council to get a jitney license. This is actually a huge area where we have authority because the council license specifies not only where they pick up and drop off, the maximum they can charge, the hours, the specific route. So there is a lot we can do here in terms of thinking about traffic patterns and who is moving around the city how. The problem is that the enforcement end, there's some gaps right now. And we're trying to figure out if it's just that everybody's going above us to the state, because DPU has a similar licensing mechanism that I think has a lot more registered participants than the jitney process. So we're figuring that out. I have promised these particular petitioners that I will not just leave this and drop it, because it is very unfair that in trying to do this the right way, they are being punished for not just essentially doing it behind our backs. So there is a larger question here. I'll be bringing it back before you all. But very interesting. I've loved being part of this, and we have a lot more work to do. But today I move for rejection of this particular petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wu. At this time, Councillor Wu moves, as the chair of the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation, moves to reject this docket, which is docket 0617. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0617, the petition has been denied. Councillor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you. So I wanted to pull dockets 0804, 0841.
0804, 0841.
Oh, I'm sorry, on page 6 of 14?
Yep. So let's start with, let's do it one by one.
Okay,
So
no problem.
docket 0804, which page is that on?
6 of 14.
6 of 14. Thank you. 04. Madam Clerk, if you could poll that committee.
Councilor Baker. Yes. Councilor Baker, yes. Councilor Siomo. Yes. Councilor Siomo, yes. Councilor Edwards.
Yes.
Councilor Edwards, yes. Councilor Flynn. Yes. Councilor Flynn, yes. And Councilor Janey. Yes. Councilor Janey, yes. There is support to pull these from the green sheets.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Docket 0804 is properly before the council. Madam Clerk, if you could read it into the record.
What is it? 0804. In the Committee on Housing and Community Development, docket number 0804, sponsored by the mayor, message and order authorizing the City of Boston, acting through its Department of Neighborhood Development, to accept and expend in the amount of $30 million given to the City of Boston's Inclusionary Development Policy Fund for the purpose of producing and preserving affordable housing in the City of Boston, referred to the committee on May 23rd, 2018.
Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. I think we all know the very need for these funds and to make sure that they are readily available for the following fiscal year. And so I just wanted to pull this from the green sheet to make sure that they're ready come July 1st. These are IDP funds that we've been already part of administrating in the city, and I'd like to continue. That's all.
Thank you.
Of course, I recommend passage.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. At this time, Councilor Edwards, who is the chair of the Committee on Housing and Community Development, recommends passage of docket 0804. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0804 has been passed. Moving on to the next docket that you would like to pull, Councilor Edwards.
I'd like to also pull 0841,
Okay.
same page 6 of 14.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, if you could poll the committee on 0841.
Councilor Baker.
Yes.
Councilor Baker, yes. Councilor Siomo. Yes. Councilor Siomo, yes. Councilor Edwards.
Yes.
Councilor Edwards, yes. Councilor Flynn. Yes. Councilor Flynn, yes. And Councilor Janey. Yes. Councilor Janey, yes. Madam President, there's unanimous consent to pull docket number 0841 from the green sheets.
Docket 0841 is properly before the council. Madam Clerk, if you could read it into the record.
In the Committee on Housing and Community Development, docket number 0841, sponsored by the mayor, message and order authorizing the City of Boston, acting through the Department of Neighborhood Development, to apply for, accept, and expend FFY 18 Housing and Community Development Grant in the amount of $27,100,793 from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, known as HUD. This order includes the following programs and estimates not to exceed amounts: Community Development Block Grant, $17,229,498. Home Investment Partnership Program, $5,863,642. Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, $2,588,781. And Emergency Solutions Grant, $1,418,872,000, referred to the committee on June 6th.
Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Again, I recommend passage. These are funds that we need currently to make sure that they're available for the fiscal year.
At this time, Councillor Edwards, who is the chair of the the Committee on Housing and Community Development, recommends passage of docket 0841. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0841 has been passed. Councillor Edwards, what is the next
The
docket?
next one on the same page, docket 0978.
I'll poll the committee.
Madam Clerk, if you could poll the committee for docket 0978.
Councillor Baker. Yes. Councillor Baker, yes. Councillor Siomo. Yes. Councillor Siomo, yes. Councillor Edwards.
Yes.
Councillor Edwards, yes. Councillor Flynn. Yes. Councillor Flynn, yes. And Councillor Janey. Yes. Councillor Janey, yes.
Docket 0978 is properly before the council. Councillor Edwards, you have, Madam Clerk, actually, if you could read docket 0978 into the record.
In the Committee on Housing and Community Development, docket number 0978, sponsored by the mayor, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $4,300,000 in the form of a grant as a subaward from the FY16 HUD Choice Neighborhoods, awarded by the Boston Housing Authority to be administered by the Department of Neighborhood Development. The grant will fund investments in education, public safety, workforce development, economic development, street improvement, public art, placemaking, parks, home ownership, and Wi-Fi. This was referred to the committee on June 20th, 2018.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards, you have the floor.
Like the other three, I think it's self-explanatory. I move for passage.
Councillor Edwards, who is the chair of the Committee on Housing and Community Development, recommends passage of docket 0978. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0978 has been passed. Do you have an additional docket?
One last one. On page 7 of 14, docket number 0979.
And I will pull the committee.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Councillor Baker.
Yes.
Councillor Baker, yes. Councillor Siomo.
Yes.
Councillor Siomo, yes. Councillor Edwards.
Yes.
Councillor Edwards, yes. Councillor Flynn. Yes. Councillor Flynn, yes. And Councillor Janey. Yes. Councillor Janey, yes. There is unanimous consent to remove these matters from green sheets.
Docket 0979 is properly before the council. Councillor Edwards, you have the floor.
This is the final one, and I am recommending, of course, passage to make sure we have the funds for housing.
At this time, Councillor Edwards, who is the chair of the Committee on Housing and Community Development, recommends passage of docket 0979. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Docket 0979 has been passed. Okay, anyone else wishing to remove? Councillor Siomo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to pull docket 0564 and 0565 from page 2 on the green sheets under assigned for further action, and for the greater detail, page 12 and 13 of 14 in the green sheets.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Siomo. Docket 0564 and 0565 are properly before the council. These are matters that we voted on previously and are following up to take a second vote. Madam Clerk, if you could read both of them into the record.
Thank you, Madam President. In the Committee on Ways and Means, docket number 0564, sponsored by the mayor, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to enter into one or more leases, lease purchase, or installment sales agreements in fiscal year 2019 in an amount not to exceed $31,700,000. These funds are to be used by various city departments for the acquisition of equipment and furtherance of their respective governmental functions. The list of equipment includes computer equipment, hardware and software, motor vehicles and trailers, ambulances, firefighting equipment, office equipment, telecommunication equipment, photocopying equipment, medical equipment, school and educational equipment, school buses, parking meters, street lighting installations, traffic signals, equipment, and equipment functionally related to and components of the foregoing. Filed in the office of the city clerk on April 9th, 2018. This was filed it was referred to committee on April 11th, 2018, and received its first reading on June 6th and was assigned for further action. And then on page 13 of 14, docket number 0565, in the Committee on Ways and Means, sponsored by the mayor, message and order approving an appropriation of $291,330,000 for the acquisition of interests in land or the acquisition of assets or the landscaping, alteration, remediation, rehabilitation, or of improvement of public land. The construction, reconstruction, rehabilitation, improvement, alteration, remodeling, enlargement, demolition, removal, or extraordinary repairs of public buildings, excuse me, facilities, assets, work, or infrastructure for the costs of feasibility studies or engineering or architectural services for plans and specifications for the development, design, purchase, and installation of computer hardware or software and computer-assisted integrated financial management and accounting systems for other public work improvements or assets with a maximum useful life of at least 5 years and not otherwise specified, for planting shade trees for the purpose of various city departments, including the Boston Center for Youth and Families, Department of Innovation and Technology, Environment, Fire, Inspectional Services Department, Neighborhood Development, Office of Arts and Culture, Parks and Recreation, Police Property Management, Public Works, Transportation Department, Boston Public Libraries, Boston Public Schools, Boston Redevelopment Authority, and Public Health Commission, filed in the office of the city clerk on April 9th, 2018. Referred to committee on April 11th, 2018, and received its first reading on June 6th, 2018.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilor Sioma, you have the floor.
Thank you. This would complete our fiscal year 19 budget approval with the second vote for the aforementioned capital project. So I recommend yes on this vote as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sioma. Councilor Sioma, who is the chair of the Committee on Ways and Means, recommends that we take a second vote in favor of dockets 0564 and 0565. I will take them individually. Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll for docket 0564.
And thank you, Madam President. Docket number 0564 for its second reading. Councilor Baker. Councilor Baker, yes. Councilor Campbell.
Yes.
Councilor Campbell, yes. Councilor Sioma. Councilor Sioma, yes. Councilor Edwards. Councilor Edwards, yes. Councilor Essaibi-George. Yes. Councilor Essaibi-George, yes. Councilor Flaherty. Yes. Councilor Flaherty, yes. Councilor Flynn. Yes. Councilor Flynn, yes. Councilor Janey. Councilor Janey, yes. Councilor McCarthy. Yes. Councilor McCarthy, yes. Councilor O'Malley. Yes. Councilor O'Malley, yes. Councilor Presley. Councilor Wu. Councilor Wu, yes. And Councilor Zachem. Yes. Councilor Zachem, yes. Madam President, docket number 0564 has received its second reading with 12 votes in the affirmative and 1 absent.
Docket 0564 has been passed. Docket 0565.
Docket 0565 for its second reading. Councilor Baker. Yes. Councilor Baker, yes. Councilor Campbell.
Yes.
Councilor Campbell, yes. Councilor Sioma. Yes. Councilor Sioma, yes. Councilor Edwards. Councilor Edwards, yes. Councilor Essaibi-George. Yes. Councilor Essaibi-George, yes. Councilor Flaherty. Yes. Councilor Flaherty, yes. Councilor Flynn. Yes. Councilor Flynn, yes. Councilor Janey. Yes. Councilor Janey, yes. Councilor McCarthy. Yes. Councilor McCarthy, yes. Councilor O'Malley. Yes. Councilor O'Malley, yes. Councilor Presley. Councilor Wu. Yes. Councilor Wu, yes. And Councilor Zachem. Yes. Councilor Zachem, yes. Madam President, docket number 0565 has received its second vote with a vote of 12-0 and has passed.
Docket 0565 has been passed. Moving on, if no one else is removing, Councilor Siomo?
I rise to ask for consent to make a statement.
Oh, can I get through the
Unanimous.
consent agenda first?
No.
And
No.
then- Thank you. So I'm just informed by the clerk that we have, looks like 2 late file matters to be added to the consent agenda. Hearing and seeing no objections, those matters are added. At this time, the chair moves for adoption of the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The consent agenda has been adopted. Let's see. Councilor Siomo, for what purpose do you rise?
Unanimous consent to make a statement.
Regarding?
Please, regarding central staff and the staff member in particular.
Go right ahead, thank you.
Thank you very much. And it was said earlier by many of us how blessed we are to have the central staff that we have. And, you know, the past 10 years, I've been chairman of Ways and Means, as you all know. And 7 of those years, I've been served. Can you come out, please?
Yes, Kate, can you come out?
Served, she's been like an extension of my staff, but even more importantly, a great friend. And her work ethic will be missed, your guidance, your counsel, your sense of humor. Everything about you, Kate, has been wonderful to work with you. I'm going to miss you tremendously, and I just wanted to present these on behalf of all of us for, you know, we're going to miss you.
Nice
This
shot,
is her
Carrie.
last budget, her 7th with me out of 10, and it's been just a wonderful experience to work with you, and you've made me look extremely good, better than I ever would without you. So thank you. And I just want to invite everybody for a reception to both honor Kate, but also to celebrate with central staff as well, my colleagues in central staff. Thank you.
Where is that?
In the Curly
It's in the
room.
Curly.
Thank you.
So thank you guys very much, and Councilor Siomo, thank you very much, and Kate, thank you as well. Okay, so let's see. I have Councilor Flynn. For what purpose do you rise? Councilor Edwards.
Thank you, Madam President. Unanimous consent to speak.
Regarding,
The United Steelworkers National Grid.
go right ahead, Councilor Flynn.
At the City Council for signing a letter of support for the United Steelworkers. As my colleagues know, the gas workers of Local 12003 and 12012 have been locked out by National Grid. Today, I joined these workers at 5 this morning in Dorchester to march in support of a fair collective bargaining process, fair living wages, health benefits, and especially and most importantly, safety. These hardworking men and women give back so much to our city. They ensure our public utilities stay safe and up to date with maintenance. They also live in our neighborhoods, coach our kids. They are our neighbors and families. The nature of gas utility work is sensitive and requires a trained workforce to ensure our infrastructure and residents remain safe. Any substitute for a trained, experienced workforce places the residents of our city at risk. Now more than ever, we must continue to support our brothers and sisters in the labor movement. I firmly, like all of you do, believe in the ability to organize and collectively bargain for fair wages and health care as an essential right for all Americans and safety in the workplace. I am proud to support our workers. I just wanted to thank my colleagues for their support as well in signing on to the letter. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Councilor Essaibi-George, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise and ask unanimous consent to make a statement regarding our BPS athletes for the spring season.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. I just want to just give a special shout out to some very cool accomplishments that some of our student athletes have had this spring season. If I could just run through this list: for the Spring City Championships, boys volleyball, Boston Latin Academy; for girls track and field, the John D. O'Brien; For boys track and field, East Boston High. For softball, Boston Latin Academy. For baseball, Snowden International. For middle school girls track and field, the Condon, and middle school boys track and field, the McCormick. And then some special notes of MIAA significance. The Latin Academy boys tennis team was a D1 North semifinalist. The Latin School girls tennis team was also a D1 North semifinalist. Excel High School, also known as Southie High, was baseball D4 North semifinalist, as was English High in the Munez, Margarita Munez Academy. They were D4 North semifinalist. And then, very exciting, we got to watch it firsthand because Doug is a graduate and a former baseball player at Boston Latin School. They were the D1 North champions and state semifinalists, which is the furthest they've ever gone in the school's history. And then athletes of the year for softball, Kayla Elliott from East Boston High, who's a pitcher. For baseball, athlete of the year is Alex Troncoso from South Boston High, a pitcher, senior. Girls track and field, athlete of the year is Jafia Gilead from West Roxbury High School, or one of the schools out there. And then boys track and field is Courtney Chong, who's a Burke Jr. Javelin and shot put was his specialty. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to those athletes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Essaibi-George. Councillor Presley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I stepped out
I know.
for the ladies' lounge, and so I want to move for reconsideration of docket number 0564, 0565.
Any objection? At this time, Councillor Presley, would you like to vote in an
Yes.
affirmative? Madam Clerk, if we could amend the record to reflect that Councillor Presley is voting in favor of docket 0564 and 0565. Thank you. At this time, if all my colleagues and guests and staff could please rise as we adjourn today's council meeting in memory of the following individuals. For Councillor Siomo, Mildred Kerniff. For Councillor Flaherty and Councillor Flynn, Stephen Flynn. For Councillor O'Malley and Councillor McCarthy, BPD Officer Joe Lomuccio. For Councillor O'Malley, Sheila Canny. For the entire council, Boston Police Lieutenant George Collier, and I'm sure all of us would say the same for the BPD Officer Joe Lomuccio, who suddenly passed away. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. At this time, the chair moves for adjournment, and at this time, the council adjourns today in memory of the following individuals. We are scheduled to meet again Wednesday, July 11th in this chamber at Boston City Hall. All those in favor of adjournment say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The council is adjourned.